All right, Tim Walz, governor of Minnesota, is the man that Kamala Harris has chosen as her running mate. We are going to take a little bit of a deeper dive into who he is, what he brings to the table, and importantly, the lines of attack that Republicans have been using against him and that they might use against him. Now, maybe the biggest asset that Walz brings to the table is that he's just a relatable, normal guy with an interesting backstory for a politician. He has charisma, which J.D. Vance doesn't. He seems to have a moral and ethical compass, which J.D. Vance doesn't. He seems to have a history of consistency with regard to how he applies his values to politics. And his background from an employment perspective is also really interesting. He worked as a high school geography teacher and football coach, and he also achieved the rank of Command Sergeant Major in the Army National Guard with 24 years of service, something that we hear from the right is to be lauded and applauded and valued. His two children were conceived through IVF, which inspired the name of their daughter, Hope. And IVF takes a sort of interesting place in this entire discussion because in the aftermath of overturning Roe v. Wade, thanks to the three Supreme Court justices nominated by Donald Trump, the next sort of battle line has been drawn around IVF in the political discourse, as well as with surrogacy, because Republicans are indeed moving on to try to roll back other reproductive rights. Michael Knowles, the vile guy from the Daily Wire, who I used to debate with until I would get too many death threats every time I appeared on his show, so I stopped doing it. Michael Knowles has come out recently against IVF and against surrogacy, or at least against it in many cases, saying elements of it are evil. In terms of his career, I guess we would say, or background as an elected official, Walz was elected to Congress in 2006 in an upset and held the largely rural district an additional 5 times. And so this is a sign of his sort of crossover appeal, maybe not to the most conservative voters, but certainly to rural voters who lean conservative in other political contexts. And when he was in Congress, he really did develop a reputation for being bipartisan, for co-sponsoring legislation with Republicans, and for getting things done. Now, he left the House in 2019 to run for governor of Minnesota and won by over 11 points. And his record as governor is impressive, to say the least. Passed a universal school meals program, which in another world, we wouldn't even say, wow, what an accomplishment. But especially in the aftermath of COVID, many Republicans have loudly said, stop the free school lunches for kids. Okay, as governor, Tim Walz passed a universal school meals program, oversaw the legalization of recreational cannabis, expanded voting rights, protected access to gender-affirming care, signed into law paid family leave. And on a sort of more personal level, Tim Walz has a number of characteristics that make him appealing. He's obviously appealing to us, right? But we are often written off as progressive coastal elites or whatever. He also has appeal to middle America. He's an enthusiastic hunter. He likes working on cars. He likes farming related activities. He's also just down to earth and likable. And that apparently was a crucial aspect to Kamala Harris's decision to ultimately select Tim Walz over the other people that were being considered. Another, I guess, important element in terms of the context of this race, because it's such a race about rhetoric and framing and messaging, is that Walz recently coined this attack line that has gone viral against Donald Trump and J.D. Vance and some other Republicans, that these guys are weird. They're just weird and they're creepy. And it's caught on like wildfire because it's, number one, really simple, and the left does not always have a penchant for simple messaging, but also because it's true. These are really weird, creepy people. They want to be in medical exam rooms with you. They want to be in classrooms with your kids. They want to be at home interfering with how you raise your kids. So there are a lot of different aspects, the legislative history, the personal charisma, the ability to speak in sort of pithy and useful terms about what the right is doing, many things about Tim Walz that make him a really good vice presidential pick. Now, as far as balancing the ticket and identity, We talked about this on the award-winning and world-famous bonus show yesterday to some degree. You may have noticed that Kamala Harris is a woman of color from California. And it's clear that the campaign wanted to go with a white-presenting man. And we often talk about both sides attacking the other side's use of identity and so on and so forth. And there's been a lot made of the fact that identity is at play here. And that's not, we talk about when identity politics goes wrong and when it's used as in the wrong way or to silence people or whatever. There was obviously an identity conversation where, as Kamala Harris and her team sat down to say, all right, who are we considering? Obviously, there was a decision made that they're not going with another woman. And it was, I'm sure, a calculated decision. Hey, you know what? There's probably more to gain here by choosing a man rather than a woman and not having two women on the ticket. For a whole bunch of different reasons, it probably helps us in the net that the vice president be a man. And it would be great to live in a world where these things didn't have to be considerations. And to some degree, we live in more of a world like that than we used to. But there are definitely people on the margins who might be less likely, who would be less likely to support a ticket with two women or two people of color. And this is probably why we saw the final handful or so candidates being white passing or white presenting men. Now, why do I say that instead of just saying white? Many of you, I'm sure, know why I'm saying that. Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, reportedly the final candidate alongside Tim Walz, is Jewish. And Judaism is a religion. It's also an ethnicity. This is the reason why sometimes in fertility treatments, you have what's called an Ashkenazi carrier panel done. There is something there that is beyond just your beliefs religiously. And white supremacists will be very quick to tell you that Jews are not white. But I use the term white presenting because Josh Shapiro certainly in social terms would be part of the group of white guys that's being considered. So Walz, certainly a white guy, a little bit, he's got the male pattern baldness and he's the whole package of your sort of generic middle-aged white guy, but he's also Midwestern. And while the conventional wisdom is you don't pick a VP to help you win any particular state, certainly didn't work. There are times where this has not worked historically, looking at elections. When you have such a focus on Wisconsin, Michigan, maybe even Pennsylvania as important states of focus, it certainly won't hurt, is my instinct, to have Tim Walz from the Midwest. Now, the other aspect about Walz that is important to consider is that he contrasts really well with J.D. Vance. Walz is the Midwestern, blue-collar, car-loving, meat and potatoes, farm-loving American that J.D. Vance tries to pretend to be and doesn't do a good job of pretending and doesn't do a good job of trying either. And that's a really interesting thing. Now, let's talk about maybe what we might call the downsides to Tim Walz or the likely attack lines or liabilities. To those who want a VP pick who can deliver a state, if you believe that they can, which I think is questionable, Minnesota was going blue anyway. Joe Biden's lead in Minnesota was significant. Kamala Harris's lead in Minnesota is significant. And so that is not an obvious advantage to Tim Walz, which is his home state is one that Kamala Harris is going to win. And also, if in whatever circumstances present themselves, Kamala Harris doesn't win Minnesota, Democrats are losing in a landslide anyway. So you could say it might have been smarter to go with Josh Shapiro, who maybe could help deliver Pennsylvania, or Mark Kelly, who could help deliver Arizona. But the counterpoint is this is not really the reason or how you evaluate choosing a vice president. And that's really the counter. There is not conclusive evidence that your VP can deliver their home state. The next attack line is going to be about the 1995 DUI arrest that Tim Walz had. He was arrested for drunk driving in 95. This led him to stop drinking alcohol. I don't know if Republicans are going to focus on that. I saw rumblings of going after him, not for the DUI and the arrest per se, because Trump's been convicted on 34 felony counts. I don't know that that's the door they want to open, but it looked like they were kind of floating the idea of he was dishonest about the DUI. I don't know that they're really going to go with that line. More over the last 48 hours, we are hearing Republicans criticize Tim Walz's departure from the military in 2005. He departed his unit, National Guard unit, shortly before it was deployed to Iraq, and he did so to run for Congress. And despite the track record of service, 24 years, there are people on the right arguing that he abandoned his fellow troops right when they needed him the most, and that they all knew they were about to get deployed to Iraq, and he was chicken and he was scared. And some are even going as far as to saying that this is stolen valor, which is he bailed to avoid going to Iraq, but still presents himself as brave or whatever, deserving credit for his service. The truth of this attack is that Walz retired in May of 2005. And the alert for mobilization came months later. The official mobilization didn't happen until October. And what individuals who served with Tim Walz have said is there were, of course, rumors we were going to be mobilized, as there were rumors in just about every unit at the time. But we didn't know. It was just rumor, and that is it. So he didn't bail once he knew they were going to Iraq. Those orders came later. And he also, by the way, used his position as a member of Congress to try to end the war and bring troops home. It also may not be wise for Republicans to open up this line of attack because Walz served in the military 24 years. Trump dodged the draft multiple times with these notes about bone spurs in his feet. So it doesn't seem super smart. Next line of attack is that Walz was governor during the George Floyd murder and subsequent protests. And there are attacks coming against him that he didn't act quickly enough to stop looting and arson, that he allowed the city to be overrun, he allowed the city to be destroyed. The reality, of course, is that this was years ago at this point. I don't know that it's an attack that's going to land. It's feeling a little bit dated. And very importantly, the audio we played at the top of the show reveals that at the time, Trump called Walz and said, "You're doing a great job. You're doing exactly what I asked you to do. You are managing this in exactly the way I wanted you to do it." So this nullifies a lot of that criticism. Now we get to sort of like the most generic attack line against Tim Walz. He's too liberal. He signed in far left laws as governor, like universal school meals or paid family leave. But those are really popular policies, including among Republicans in Minnesota. So I think that that's liable to backfire as well. So it's been days now since Tim Walz was selected. Republicans so far haven't found anything super effective, and he's been really well received, which is very different than the case with J.D. Vance, who keeps having to answer for bizarre statements he's made about cat ladies. And there's a bunch of discussion now as to whether he's wearing ladies' makeup and his backstory romantically with couches and all of these things. So was Walz a strong pick? 100%. Was he the best pick? That's really hard to say until you look back in the rearview mirror. You can make a strong case for Josh Shapiro. You can make a strong case for Mark Kelly, although I think Mark Kelly in adversarial situations is a little bit less strong. But if anything, this is indicative of the deep Democratic bench that we have right now and the fact that the left is relatively well set up for the future. I don't think that it's a sign that it was a mistake to pick Walz, that there were other good options. It's a sign that there's a deep bench here. So bottom line, Kamala Harris and Tim Walz are an excellent team. Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, are they weird? Yes. Are they creepy? Yes, of course. But Trump's increasing brain collapse combined with J.D. Vance's total lack of charisma and ability to answer any question in a straightforward way is making this increasingly a matchup that on the personality side favors Harris Walz. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know your thoughts about the pick. info@davidpakman.com. And make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel at youtube.com/The David Pakman Show.